Good morning and welcome to Superintendent's Conference Day 2024. In the following 40 minutes, you will engage in a presentation reviewing the next generation learning standards for geometry and how they will impact our students and teaching practices. Please try your best to remain engaged and attentive during the entire session so that you may get the most from this professional development. As we know, we always start every presentation with the superintendent's moving to the next level slide. This slide connects everything we do to one of the district's tenets. This professional development is mostly aligned to strong community schools, as we are engaging in work that will further prepare ourselves to do the best teaching we can do each and every day, thus allowing our students and schools to be strong and successful. At the start of each presentation, we also take a moment to reiterate and connect our 5x25 goals to the professional development. This professional development is aligned to goals 1 and 2, eliminating achievement and opportunity gaps, and providing access to educational excellence and accelerated learning. Our theory of action holds that if we want to prepare our students to be successful, both socially and academically, now and in the future, we must do several things, including ensuring a welcoming and affirming environment, holding high expectations for all, providing rigorous instruction and inclusive curriculum, and by providing ongoing professional learning opportunities to prepare all staff to support our students. Here is our plan for today. We will start with revisiting some reminders, dates, and a geometry overview. We will then move to clarifying existing standards and the Geometry Plus standards. Next, we will review any new or moved standards, highlights and considerations, the crosswalk documents, and provide the links for any NYSED resources to support in our transition to the next generation learning standards for geometry. For today's professional development, we will review several documents. Please take this moment to locate each document in Schoology and open it in another window or tab. Here is the instruction and assessment implementation timeline for our next generation learning standards. As we see, the 2024-2025 school year will include two changes. One, January 2025 will be the last and final administration of the Geometry Common Core Regents exam. And two, June 2025 will be the first administration of the geometry exam aligned to the New York State Next Generation Learning Standards. As teachers, the goal is to ensure that the standards taught reflect any changes to the standards so that the lessons are aligned to the Next Generation Learning Standards. We also see the history and the future implementation plans for New York State and the Next Generation Learning Standards for mathematics. For your convenience, the first and last administration for each of the new Regents examinations are listed clearly on this chart. Please take note of the dates that impact mathematics. New York State has also provided a glossary of verbs. This document includes key verbs associated with the New York State Next Generation Learning Standards for Mathematics. These verbs appear throughout the mathematics standards and are explained in the context in which they are used. Please take a moment to review this document. There were several revisions, additions, vertical movement, and clarifications made to the New York State Next Generation Learning Standards. Standards were moved in order to improve focus, which provides more time for students to develop deep levels of understanding of grade level content and skills. New standards were added in order to strengthen the coherency of the standards, allowing for a stronger connection of learning within and across grade levels. Standards were removed in order to improve coherence, focus, and reduce redundancy amongst the grade levels. The verb explore was added to the language. Exploring a standard allows students to be introduced to and learn a concept without the expectation of mastering the concept at that grade level. Exploring the topic recognizes the importance of building a foundation toward mastering the concept in subsequent grades. Standards were also clarified for more accurately identification of the expectation of the standard, helping to improve the focus of instruction. This included changing, deleting, adding of language, the addition of notes and diagrams, and the modification of prior examples. In addition, the rigor of the standards were preserved by balancing the need for conceptual understanding, procedural skill, and application. Finally, the glossary of verbs was added as an additional resource. On the next several pages, we will take a deep dive through the clarifications that were made to the existing standards. We will go through each domain and review the standards where clarifications have been made. In the congruence domain, there were 5 standards where clarifying notes were added. Please note, in 2019, an update was made to standard GCO3. Originally, the standard stated that given a regular or irregular polygon, describe the rotations and reflections that map the polygon onto itself. In order to include all symmetries as intended by the standard, the language of map needed to be replaced with carry. Take a moment to read the slide with all the clarifications that have been made to the standards. Please read the slide. If needed, use the Schoology document. It can be found on page 126 of the New York State Next Generation Learning Standards document. Standard GCO6 makes clear that a translation displaces every point in the plane by the same distance and can be described using a vector. Also, that a rotation requires knowing the center point and the measure or direction of the angle of rotation. Lastly, it states that a line reflection requires a line and the knowledge of perpendicular bisectors. Please take a moment to review this slide. Mathematical practice 2 is used in geometry when, for example, students use a diagram of a specific isosceles triangle as an aid to reason about all isosceles triangles. This is connected to standard C09. Mathematical practice 3 connects to standard C09 and 10 when students develop the skill of creating and presenting proofs. They are constructing viable arguments and have the opportunity to critique the reasoning of others. Seeing structure in geometric configurations can lead to insights and proofs. This is mathematical practice number 7. This often involves the creation of auxiliary lines not originally part of a given figure. Two classic examples are the construction of a line through a vertex of a triangle, parallel to the opposite side, as a way to see that the angle measures of a triangle add to 180 degrees, and the introduction of a symmetry line in an isosceles triangle to see that the base angles are congruent. There are multiple notes that are included with this standard. Please take a moment to review this slide. Please use the document from Schoology if needed. It can be found on page 129 on the New York State Next Generation Learning Standards document. Dynamic geometry environments can help students look for invariants in a whole class of geometric constructions. And the constructions in such environments can sometimes lead to an idea behind the proof of a conjecture. This is connected to standard CO12 and 13. It is also an example of using appropriate tools strategically. Take a moment to review this slide. Please review the slide. You may use your Schoology document if needed. It can be found on page 131 of the New York State Next Generation Learning Standards document. When students use area as a device to establish results about proportions, such as the important theorem that a line parallel to one side of a triangle divides the other two sides proportionally, they are making use of structure. This is mathematical practice number 7. Take a moment to read the slide, paying special attention to the notes added to the standards. In this clarifying note, the term special right triangle refers to the 30, 60, 90 and the 45, 45, 90 triangles. In geometry, students conjecture about geometric phenomena that pertain to infinitely many cases at once. For example, every angle inscribed in a semicircle is a right angle. Students do this because it is impossible to check every case. When they do this, they are constructing viable arguments and have the opportunity to critique the reasoning of others. This is mathematical practice number 3. Please take a moment to review the slide. Please take a moment to read the slide. If needed, refer to the document in Schoology. It will be found on page 135 of the New York State Next Generation Learning Standards document. Fluency with procedures, or procedural fluency, means students are accurate, efficient, flexible, and know when and how to use them appropriately. Developing fluency requires understanding why and how a procedure works. Understanding makes learning procedures easier, less susceptible to common errors, less prone to forgetting, and easier to apply in new situations. Students also need opportunities to practice on a moderate number of carefully selected problems after they have established a strong conceptual foundation for the mathematical basis for the procedure. Please take a moment to review this slide. You should also note that the word explore is written in the standard GPE 5. Explore indicates that the topic is an important concept that builds the foundation for progression towards mastery in later grades. Repeated experiences with these concepts, with immersion in the concrete, are essential to students succeeding with the explored topic. Please read the slide. You may use your document from Schoology if needed. This can be found on page 136 of the New York State Next Generation Learning Standards document. In the note for this standard, it is made clear that the standard reads plain sections. But plain sections are not limited to being parallel or perpendicular to the base. Please take a moment to review the slide. Please read the following slide. You may use the document from Schoology if needed. It can be found on page 138 of the New York State Next Generation Learning Standards document. The PLUS standards offer additional mathematics beyond Algebra 2 that students should learn in order to take advanced courses such as calculus, advanced statistics, or discrete mathematics. The PLUS standards are not a high school course. This slide is intended to provide an overview of the PLUS standards for all courses. These standards are dispersed throughout course curriculums, including Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry. They are intended to increase the rigor and support the needs of individual students and mathematical programs. They are not expected to be addressed on state assessments. And finally, the PLUS standards provide coherence and extend concepts which were previously taught in Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. There are 7 Geometry PLUS standards. Please take a moment to review this slide. We will now review the new standards. There are 2 new standards to geometry. G SRT 9, which states to justify and apply the formula A equals 1/2 AB sine times C to find the area of any triangle by drawing an auxiliary line from a vertex perpendicular to the opposite side. And GPE 1B, which states to graph circles given their equation. The center will be an ordered pair of integers and the radius a positive integer. We will now review the standards which were moved. There is one standard that has been moved from geometry. Please take a moment to review the following. Also note that although the standard has been removed, the content is covered in the standards below. Next, we will move into the snapshot document, highlights and considerations, the crosswalk document, and the NYSED resources. The Geometry Snapshot is intended to help educators identify the key changes that have occurred to the content standards for this grade level or course, and also to assist with designing curriculum and lessons aligned to the New York State Next Generation Learning Standards. This document does not contain the comprehensive list of learning standards for geometry. Always refer to the New York State Next Generation Mathematics Learning Standards document for the complete list of standards. We will take a moment to review this document. At the bottom of the Geometry Snapshot document are the highlights and the instructional considerations for geometry. There are 6 standards that NYSED has highlighted for consideration. Review this portion of the snapshot document. For each standard listed, what considerations should teachers now be mindful of? What implications, if any, will they have on the teaching practices we currently use with our students? The crosswalk documents are a reference tool for educators and parents to efficiently compare the changes between the 2011 New York State Pre-K to 12 Common Core Learning Standards, and the 2017 Next Generation Learning Standards. The crosswalks can assist educators in understanding and assessing the scope of the content changes and the impact those changes will have on student learning, curriculum, instruction, and instructional resources. The crosswalk should be used as a valuable resource. Always refer to the New York State Next Generation Learning Standards document for a comprehensive understanding of the standards for all mathematics courses. Take a moment to review the Geometry Crosswalk document. Here are the links to the NYSED resources discussed throughout this professional development. Please save and use these resources as you are making instructional decisions throughout this summer and upcoming school year. Thank you again for your engagement and participation in today's professional development. As we transition into the next generation learning standards for geometry, please feel free to always reach out to the math department, Jadon Wagstaff, who is the director, or myself, Jaren Horde, who is the supervisor, with any questions and or concerns.